If you were going to start a new web app with ASP.NET Core, I would absolutely recommend.
Is there an area where you think, like, man, I wish people knew more about this?
We're doing a lot of work, obviously, in the .NET platform, but there's also a lot of effort happening in.
Welcome to a special episode of DevQuestions. I'm here with Dan Roth. Dan, thanks for joining me.
Hello, it's great to be here.
So you're the product manager for ASP.NET Core and Blazor?
That's right.
That's a lot. So what does that entail?
Well, it entails making sure that people can build awesome web apps with .NET. It's understanding the future of web development, what's happening in the web platform, and thinking about how can we facilitate that with great .NET libraries for web development. Excellent.
Before you jump into that, I'm curious, how did you get to this point in life? Like, you're not born into Microsoft, right?
You poor thing, Dan. How did this happen to you?
Yes, exactly.
Well, I've been at Microsoft now for quite a while, and I've been working on .NET the entire time. So I started back in like .NET Framework 2. I think was about to go out the. It was being worked on. I think 1.1 had just shipped, and we were now working on .NET Framework 2. So a couple decades I've been at Microsoft. I was straight out of college.
Okay.
I was a computer science major, and so it was actually an interesting decision point for me when I came out of college. Was I going to become a full-on developer? Just be write code, or was I going to do something more business related? And I had this desire to sort of balance wanting to do engineering, also with having influence and impact on business decisions related to what we were building. And the product, it was at the time it was a program management. It wasn't product management yet at Microsoft. But they had this role where you could, own the conversations with the customers, understanding what requirements they had, and at the same time work on things that were for software developers, for engineers, people building software, and get your hands dirty with code. And so I ended up going the program management route at that time, and then later that just got renamed basically to become product management. Straight college to Microsoft, and I've been living the dream ever since, working on .NET. I started out on SOAP services. Like, do you remember?
Okay, I do.
Asimex.
Yes.
SOAP services, ASP.NET SOAP services. Yep.
I remember them. Not fondly, but I remember them.
I became one of those few people who could look at. Do you remember WSDL documents?
Yes.
There were these. It was kind of like the XML version of OpenAPI specs. Honestly, instead of JSON, it was XML and describing SOAP message formats. And I was one of those few people that could look at a WSDL document and XML schema documents and actually understand what the heck they were saying, what was going on with them. I worked on that for years, and WCF came later, Windows Communication Foundation. And then I moved on to work on web with ASP.NET, MVC, and ASP.NET Web API originally. I started out kind of shifting from the back-end services space, then heading towards web development. So SOAP services, then APIs, and then Web UI.
Worked your way forward.
And then that blessed day came when we got Blazor with Steve Sanderson did his demo of Blazor at NDC in Oslo, and then I got to work with him on building out the future of the web development, Web UI, at least part of the ASP.NET Core stack, and that's been super fun.
Excellent. So, you're a fan of Blazor.
I do like it.
Yeah,
I do enjoy it.
I've heard that.
I still remember sitting in front of those early Blazor prototypes and writing my first Blazor app and feeling like I can do front end now. Like I knew some JavaScript, but I think like a lot of people were I had just enough to be dangerous skills with JavaScript. But with Blazor, I could use my C# skills and what I knew about the web to build rich interactive web apps, and that was just like heavenly. It was just a great experience.
It is a wonderful experience to use Blazor. So Blazor started off with just Blazor Server, which is the signal arc communication between the front end and the back end. Then we got WebAssembly.
Yep.
And we got hybrid in there shortly after, I believe, which is kind of a whole different thing with
more
Maui.
native apps. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Hybrid, web, and native together.
But then we moved on to Blazor Web Apps, which is kind of you put everything in one big pot, shook it up, and said, hey, here's one template that can do everything.
Carefully crafted, Tim. Carefully crafted the pieces that we wanted to get. Yeah, Blazor Web Apps were an effort. I mean, yeah, you're right. Like we started out with sort of this collection of Blazor. We called them hosting models, right? And actually, originally we didn't plan to start with Blazor Server. We originally planned to start with Blazor WebAssembly. That was the demo that Steve Sanderson originally did. It was building a small .NET runtime in WebAssembly, and then seeing, well, can I do some interesting things with that? Could I build a little web framework on top of that, kind of inspired by React and the other component-based front-end web frameworks that were available, and that's how Blazor was originally born. It took a little while for us to figure out how to ship that .NET WebAssembly runtime. Like, which one are we going to? Like, we had the mono based runtimes that were available. There was some work on the core CLR, and so I was trying to figure out which runtime we wanted to use for doing that. We ended up going with the mono version. And getting that runtime ready for production loads took some time. In the interim was when we had this idea. I was like, well, we actually could take this component model and kind of run it remotely over the server over a WebSocket connection and give you much of that same rich interactive experience in .NET and C# without needing the WebAssembly runtime just yet. And we can keep working on that and maybe ship it later. And so that shipped in, I think it was 2019, the first version of Blazor Server when it was stable. And WebAssembly came in the middle of the next year, mid 2020. But to this day, actually, the Blazor Server model is still the most popular Blazor model that we have. People really enjoy the convenience of having the rich interactivity, but also having your code still have access to all those server resources. You want to talk to the database or get access to server-side things. Well, you're already there. You don't have to stand up separate API endpoints and all those types of concerns. So people do enjoy that. But we ended up then with these two different hosting models, and you kind of had to always pick. And I had lots and lots of conversations with customers, like, which should I use, Blazor Server or Blazor WebAssembly? And you go through the decision matrix about the pros and cons of each of those models. Blazor Web Apps was really an attempt to, simplify that choice, make it so it wasn't really a choice you had to make up front. You could kind of choose on even a per component basis how you wanted that component to render. Some components maybe you want to push down to the browser and leverage client-side capabilities of that user's machine and their CPU and their memory and their storage and whatever access they have over there. And some components you want to run on the server. So Blazor Web Apps was kind of like, let's take Blazor Server, Blazor WebAssembly, and merge them together into a unified app model. So it's no longer a choice. Do you do Blazor WebAssembly or Blazor Server? You just say, you build a Blazor Web App, and then you decide how different parts of your app you want to be architected. And we also then introduced like static server-side rendering, sort of the traditional, old school way of building. Yeah, MVC, or even web forms, right?
True,
where you just, you send a request to the server, you run some .NET code, and you get some HTML back. Well, Blazor can do that now too. So we added that into the mix. So you really have the full suite of capabilities that you might want for building a modern, richly interactive web application. That was the idea. So hopefully the answer for most people now is just, we'll build a Blazor web app and then think about where does it make sense for the code to run? What are you trying to do, and what makes the most sense for your scenarios?
Yeah, I like the idea of not making that choice up front because I don't know how many times I've built a website where I'm like, let's go back and redo this.
Yeah.
Let's change this over now. You need to make some changes. And the idea that you can start with that fully server side and just say, fine, we'll do a static site. We'll do a fully static side or server side rendered. And then you say, but I really want that one component. And you just drop that one component in, and all of a sudden that lights up as a client-side thing. Like a little island.
I need a little island of interactivity here, and this one would be best if it was really running on the client, or this one would be best if it's running on the server. Blazor gives you that flexibility. And I wouldn't knock also the traditional static server-side rendering approaches. Like, the beauty of that style of rendering is in terms of load performance, it loads super fast.
Sure.
You're not downloading any JavaScript to get anything running. You're just rendering, using your all the resources that you have available on the server to produce whatever UI you want, the HTML, get that down to the client, and then immediately render it. So that's, in some sense, that's the optimal spot to land for the end user experience. And then you kind of light up interactivity as you need it. Is kind of how we think about things, and that's how we've structured the default Blazor web app template now. It's a primarily static server-side rendering with you then add interactivity where you want it.
Yeah, because requirements never change after you first launch a
Right.
website. So, but yeah, I really like that. I like the idea that it's performance first, it's SEO first, it's all these things up front first, and then you get to choose later. I want to tweak something, or I want to have something be interactive later. I really like that.
It's worth mentioning that it is actually even a little richer than that, because like with static server-side rendering, traditional static server-side rendering, you make the request and you're done. We did also add these enhancements to that model in Blazor. We have this notion of enhanced navigation, enhanced form handling, where we do actually load some framework JavaScript on the client, and we can then take those page navigations, take those form posts, and basically make them more richly interactive. Like we can intercept a navigation, and instead of doing a full page load, we can just do a fetch request, get the updated DOM elements from the server. The server still does effectively static server-side rendering to produce the HTML, but then on the client, Blazor can look at that DOM, what's in the DOM and what was just sent, and do its DOM diffing magic as part of loading that page. So you get this more fluid navigation experience instead of the page going completely away then coming back. Similar thing with form posts. Like we can intercept the form post, do a fetch request instead, get the response HTML and patch that into the DOM. So it actually feels very SPA-like, even though there's it's not a traditional SPA app in that you're like downloading a big bundle of JavaScript to run everything. So you can actually get really far just with those two features and static server-side rendering. When you need more interactivity, then of course you can use the other models.
Go from there. Excellent. So let's ask some of the elephant in the room questions. So the first one is, we're talking about Blazor, and it has changed. Like you said, 2019. It's been around for a while now. That's 6 years.
It's gotten kind of mature. Like I know people, for many, many years, people would say like, but Blazor's new.
It's always new, right?
I'm like, it's not so new anymore. Like this has been around a while, and it's being used. It's been really fun actually talking to people here at Build about all the awesome scenarios that they're doing with Blazor and the places the places that they've deployed it. So it's been around a little while. It's a bit proven at this point.
True. So we've got the Blazor server, Blazor WebAssembly. Now we have Blazor Web App. Are we thinking that's where it's kind of settling in that Blazor Web App kind of project type, and just going forward, we're building on that, making it more and more mature?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's no big like new Blazor, I don't know,
Blazor V-Next kind of thing, or
Blazor AI, or something coming next. We are actually we have quite a bit of focus this release on the server-side rendering parts of Blazor, but it fits within the Blazor Web App model. So you're not having to there's no. I mean, even when we introduce Blazor Web Apps, we still support the older Blazor Server and Blazor WebAssembly models. You can still just update those apps to .NET 8, .NET 9, and you will be able to do again in .NET 10, and they still work and still function as is. If you switch them over to the Blazor Web App model if you wanted to get the new features, like if you wanted the more flexibility and control over which render mode that you're using per component. So in 10, we're focusing mostly on the server. There's some WebAssembly stuff as well, but one of the big investments is actually helping with state persistence.
Okay.
When you're doing server-side rendering, particularly interactive server-side rendering, that's effectively a stateful programming model. Like you're maintaining state for each connected user to your app. And right now, that state is just held in memory. So if anything happens to it, then the user goes into this disconnected state, and their whatever they were in the middle of gets interrupted. This can happen, for example, if the user connection gets dropped, and the server decides to evict the circuit. Like maybe the user put the tab in the background, or they swipe away from the app on their phone. Often browsers, when they're in that state, they'll decide to close all the connections to save power or just reduce resource usage on the client. So then the connection goes down on the server. The server has this circuit that it's holding onto, and we will hold onto it for a little while in case the user comes back and reconnects. But at some point, the server will decide, well, I guess that user's gone, so I'm just going to evict this circuit. And then if the user had just gone to lunch, and then they come back from lunch and they try to reopen their app, and they're in the middle of a big form or whatever, they might see hey, your state's lost, refresh the page to get started again. In 10, we're going to give you the ability to persist the circuit state before it gets evicted, and then be able to reload it again when the client comes back. So even if you have these long disconnected situations that happen, the user's experience won't get as rudely interrupted as it might have been previously. We think this will also potentially help with like scalability. A stateful model like Blazor Server means that you have to maintain all these server resources for each user that's connected, and some of those circuits might even be not being used. Like maybe the user did go to lunch and that circuit is just idle and sitting there and not doing anything. You might decide as an app policy, well, I'm just going to persist that circuit and sort of put it in storage, and then when the user wants to use it again, I'll rehydrate it again. Or maybe like the user's client, what the user was looking at is no longer visible, and you could send like a signal to the server to say, hey, the user's not going to be doing anything with this because the browser's not even shown on the screen. Go ahead and save it. You can implement policies like that to improve the scalability of your apps. We're not going to. That one we probably won't do anything automatic. Like that one will probably be something you implement yourself. Like we'll give you the APIs to decide when circuits get persisted and evicted, so you can implement what policy you'd like. That way you'll have the tools to do what makes sense for your app.
Yeah.
But the eviction case where the user was disconnected for a long period of time, that one we're thinking that will be an option that we'll just provide out of the box so that your Blazor server style apps are more resilient.
Excellent. I love it. So the other question that comes up a lot is, Microsoft is known for eating its own dog food. Where are you using Blazor?
We actually do use Blazor quite a bit internally.
Excellent. Okay.
Now, to be fair, like it is true that most of our large like public-facing properties, like I don't know, like Microsoft 365, Office Online, for example. Many of those are not actually using Blazor today, or Dynamics, or Teams, these types of things. In part because a lot of those apps were built before Blazor even existed, so they had a long-standing existing code base that they had to move forward with. So there's quite a bit of, like, for example, React is fairly heavily used at Microsoft. But internally, like lots of teams internally are using Blazor for line of business applications inside the company for fairly business critical and substantial things. The way we manage our like employee identities at Microsoft, like when you need to reset your password or whatever, like all that stuff is built using Blazor.
Interesting.
The Bing team uses Blazor for their like experimental platform that they use for managing like flighting out releases onto the internet to like Bing.com. Xbox has various internal tools and things that they use that are implemented in Blazor. The app that we use to like compensate our field, that whole thing, which has tens of thousands of users that come in at certain spikes of traffic at certain times of the year, that's implemented with Blazor. So we do actually use Blazor quite a bit internally at Microsoft. But we're a big company. There's lots of technologies that we use internally. It's not just Blazor. A really cool engagement that we've just started, and it's really early on this, so this is not something that's been like deployed. But we've been talking with the Bing team that manages Bing.com. Bing.com, actually, quite a bit of that is implemented. The front end is implemented in .NET. It is running on ASP.NET Core, but it's using like it's kind of like a custom Razor view engine that they built that had sort of their own component model on top of it in order for rendering the Bing.com pages. They would really like to move on to something that's more kind of first class in the box. They support it, directly. They don't have to maintain them themselves, and so they're very interested in moving that to server-side rendered Blazor, and we're currently in early explorations with them on that. So who knows? Maybe Bing.com in the future might end up being Blazor-based as well. We'll have to see how that engagement goes. They have a lot of views, so that's not a short-term project. Yeah,
the idea that you can change overnight is a little bit laughable.
Well, maybe with some AI, right? Just throw some AI at it and say, turn this all to Blazor, and poof.
I'm
great.
Sure someone's tried that. So, you're looking at what you have now with Blazor, and you can do a fully server-side rendered site.
Yeah.
But you can turn things on and get to that client side when you want. The other alternatives in the ASP.NET Core suite are, Razor Pages, MVC. Where do you see those fitting in long term compared to Blazor?
So MVC and Razor Pages still fully supported. They're part of ASP.NET Core, and we have lots of users that use those frameworks every month to get their job done. Those are, like we were saying earlier, traditional static server-side rendered frameworks. They get a request, generate some HTML, and then they're done. Anything you want to do in terms of like interactivity, you write some JavaScript in order to handle that. Blazor is our most comprehensive and complete web UI offering that we have in ASP.NET Core, and it's part of ASP.NET Core. Like the component model is in the framework right alongside MVC and Razor Pages. Sometimes I feel like it's probably partially my fault. I almost talk about Blazor as if it's this separate thing, but it's really part of our broader ASP.NET Core web framework offering. And it's our recommended web UI offering at this point. Like if you were going to start a new web app with ASP.NET Core, I would absolutely recommend using Blazor because it can do all the things that like an MVC or Razor Pages style app can do, and so much more. Like it can handle all the client-side interactivity. It gives you the flexibility to use the render mode that makes the most sense for your app. If you want to then take those components and use them to build a native application, you can use Blazor Hybrid to embed them in like a .NET MAUI application or WPF or WinForms or whatever. So it's the most flexible offering that we have. And that's really where we're spending our time and investment. MVC and Razor Pages are still supported. We still like that. You'll still get like all the new C# language features, the new .NET Framework, platform features. They will continue to ride the platform, but they're not really where we're investing. Blazor is where we're spending our time there, and that's where I would generally point people to. Front-end JavaScript is also perfectly fine as well. I know we have lots of ASP.NET Core developers that build their front ends in JavaScript, and there are lots of great front-end JavaScript frameworks to choose from. That's also perfectly fine. Obviously, Microsoft does that, and you can too. You should not feel like, if you're doing Angular or React or Vue or whatever, that you have to like move to Blazor. Like, no, there are actually, in some cases, good reasons to use those frameworks instead of Blazor. For example, if you really care about like every millisecond of load time performance on your web application for like a consumer-facing site, then I might consider using JavaScript instead of Blazor for that. Blazor's not going to be as fully optimized for the load time performance like those frameworks would be if you need that kind of interactivity.
Excellent. So we got the long-term support for Razor Pages and MVC. That's not going away.
Not going away.
What we're saying, but which I really love the fact that I hear a lot. Well, Microsoft dumps products, and then it's like I've been in that Microsoft space for a very long time, and I've seen the total opposite of that. Where MVC's been around since .NET Framework 2, or is it 3?
Like the original ASP.NET
the original
MVC,
ASP, which has
been around for a long time.
Which is basically, and it just kind of continues that support over and over for years and years and years, and you can build a product on it knowing that it's not going anywhere. You've got that support.
Even ASP.NET MVC on .NET Framework, that is still
fully supported.
You can still build your app and get fixes for that. In fact, we've done a couple fixes for that not that long ago. We do our best to support our customers where they're at. Like if we have lots of users, we want to keep that Microsoft promise of support, that we're not going to just abandon you. Do some things get cut, obviously.
Sure.
I'm sure we could all name our stories of our favorite product or feature that got cut. I often get reminded about Silverlight whenever I'm talking to people about Blazor.
I have a whole video on that.
It's kind of funny, actually. In some sense, Blazor helped resurrect Silverlight because there's a great community project called OpenSilver that is a Silverlight port that runs on top of the .NET WebAssembly runtime that we use for Blazor. There's a couple of web UI frameworks that use that same runtime to do different programming models like Uno and Avalonia and OpenSilver. So I guess in some sense, Blazor brought Silverlight back, I guess you could say, if you really like that model. But Blazor is kind of nice because it gives you you get HTML, CSS, and C#, so you get you right hands-on with the web platform, but also get to use your .NET skills.
Yeah, love it. So we've talked a little bit about this, but there's some new things coming out in .NET 10. What's most exciting for you in .NET 10?
So there's a lot of great stuff in 10. We already talked about the state persistence work. That's kind of the big thing that we're really working on the Blazor side. Other things in ASP.NET Core and in Blazor that we're working on. For Blazor WebAssembly users, we're doing a lot of work on diagnostics so that you can do like performance profiling, get memory diagnostics, get like perf counters, metrics from your Blazor WebAssembly apps. Today, there's really not a great way to do that. You have this .NET code, running on this WebAssembly runtime inside the browser. It's hard to get information out of there. We are instrumenting the runtime and providing infrastructure so that you can, do CPU sampling and get a net trace file out of the browser, or get a get a GC dump out of the browser, so you can do memory analysis and performance analysis as well. So that's one big one that we're working on. There's a lot of work happening around security in .NET 10. Obviously, security is more important than ever before, and Microsoft has been heavily investing in security recently with our Secure Future initiative. In ASP.NET Core, we're adding passkey support to ASP.NET Core identity, so you can have passwordless authentication using our built-in authentication system. We're also looking for people who want to use like Entra-based authentication in their Blazor web apps. That's been kind of a gap in our tooling story. We used to just have this checkbox that you could say, like, file a new project, create a Blazor server or MVC or Razor Pages app with Entra Auth. We don't really have that tooling experience for Blazor web apps yet. What we're doing is we're working with the Web Tools team on a new Entra Auth scaffolder that's based off of the new .NET Scaffold tool, which is fairly recently shipped. .NET Scaffold is a really nice interactive CLI experience for generating code into your existing projects, and there are a bunch of scaffolders that are already shipped with it that you can use today. Like there's the Blazor, we call it the CRUD scaffolder. Like you create, read, update, delete pages. That one already is there. We want to add one for adding Entra Auth to any of your ASP.NET Core apps, but including your Blazor web apps. So that's something we're working on right now. A bunch of performance work. For ASP.NET Core, we're doing work on Kestrel so that the Kestrel memory pool can now free up memory. Kestrel has this memory pool that it uses to reuse memory, so it doesn't have to allocate, so that it gets more efficient and more performant. But it doesn't actually currently ever release memory out of the memory pool, which for many apps is perfectly fine. Like the way that functions is not usually an issue, but when you use it at hyperscale, it can sometimes be an issue. The Azure App Service folks actually approach us because they occasionally get spikes in traffic, and when the traffic spikes, the memory pool expands, and then it would stay at that high watermark. And they handle like literally billions of requests using ASP.NET Core every day, and so they were like, hey, it'd be really nice if we could reduce that memory again, because we're using a lot of memory. So we've been working with them on that and experimenting with different approaches for freeing up that memory. And we've actually been like flighting different strategies into production with them so we can test them out. And we've made really great progress there. That should be coming to .NET 10 preview pretty soon. And I think it's a great example of where, because Microsoft uses ASP.NET Core so heavily internally, like all our big services on the back end are definitely based on .NET. So, Microsoft 365, Teams, Copilot, Xbox, most of our Azure services are all built in .NET. Because we use ASP.NET Core at hyperscale so much, you get the benefit as users of knowing that this has been tested and proven at under heavy load. So that's another thing that's coming. A bunch of stuff. I don't know. That's just a few. And I know, and there's obviously new C# language features that are coming, and improvements to the core libraries. You can see the full list of what's new in .NET 10 in the on Microsoft Learn in the .NET docs. There's the what's new in .NET 10 doc, and we are keeping that updated with each preview that we ship, so you can see the what's currently there, and that will just keep getting longer as we approach our final.
It gets overwhelming, but I love that list. I love seeing the list of all the things that change. It's great. I do like the fact that, yes, you're using it heavily. You're investing in your own tools, and you're saying, we're slamming this, and so here's how we can make it better, because that just kind of trickles down to all of us, and we get the benefit from those changes. I appreciate you being here. If you look over, and man, I'm putting you on a spot here, but if you look over all of the usage patterns you've probably seen, you've probably seen the metrics of who uses what and how. Is there an area where you think, like, man, I wish people knew more about this, or I wish people had known about this feature or this system or way of doing things that maybe you think is underutilized?
Underutilized features, things that are cool that you might not know about. I don't know. I'm trying to think here. I hope people know about these things, but news sometimes takes time in the .NET ecosystem and enterprises to trickle out. Like, we're doing a lot of work, obviously, in the .NET platform, but there's also a lot of effort happening in like .NET Aspire and .NET AI to augment your .NET development experience. Those are areas of investment that aren't directly in like .NET 10 itself. They kind of ship out of band and separately because they're honestly moving faster. Like they're doing more innovation. If you haven't used .NET Aspire with ASP.NET Core, you should. Every ASP.NET Core developer should be trying out .NET Aspire. It's not. I think many ASP.NET Core developers have sort of maybe a misconception that Aspire is somehow some separate thing. That's a different programming model that you do. I'm not an Aspire developer. I'm an ASP.NET Core developer. That's actually It's actually exactly the opposite. Like Aspire, I think of as like an extension to ASP.NET Core. It is a whole bunch of tooling and features and integrations that make your life as an ASP.NET Core developer so much better. Like all these things that we have in ASP.NET Core that are there, but you have to like wire up and configure. Aspire just will like handle those things for you. When you're building, an ASP.NET Core app and it, goes beyond just a single process, and now you've got like, 10 projects, you got to get them all running if you want to run the entire app locally. Aspire just handles that for you. Getting your metrics and your logs and traces. Like, yeah, all that data is there, but you have to go read the docs to figure out how to see them. And why am I not seeing the logs for feature X? Oh, I got to go configure that. Aspire just sets that all up and gives you an awesome dashboard for viewing all that data. So I think that, for me, that's probably one of the big ones. Like, I would really love to see more people take advantage of what Aspire has to offer. You can add Aspire to any ASP.NET Core app. Anyone. There are templates that you just right-click and say, make this an Aspire app. And you don't have to change how you deploy it. You don't have to change how you're doing your development. It just adds goodness to your app. So I would encourage people to use that, whether you're doing Blazor or web APIs or minimal APIs, anything with ASP.NET Core. Aspire adds a lot of value. So that would be a big one.
Love it. Excellent. Well, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. And thanks for watching. As always, I am Tim Corey.